Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make baked cake donuts, and this is what they look like. On the outside they're coated with the delicious cinnamon sugar, and inside they're wonderfully soft and tender. So to make the batter, if you have an electric stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer for this. The first thing you will need is 2 large eggs, and have your eggs at room temperature. A large egg weighs about 55 grams in the shell. And then you will need 2/3 of a cup, which is 135 grams of granulated white sugar. So now what we're going to do is we're going to beat these together on high speed until it's really nice and thick and like a pale yellow color. Now that can take about 5 minutes, so it does take a while. Okay, so this is what you're looking for. Nice and thick, like a very pale yellow color. So next, I'm going to add, little malfunction there. I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons, 6 grams of pure vanilla extract for flavoring, and I'm going to beat that in. Okay. So now for our dry ingredients, in a separate bowl I have 2 2/3 cups, which is 345 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. To that I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon, which is 2 grams of salt. I'm adding 3 teaspoons, 12 grams of baking powder, and then cake donuts to me need nutmeg. That's kind of the flavoring that I associate with a cake donut. So I'm using 3/4 of a teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. Now, if you liked, that gives you like a mild, very subtle nutmeg flavor. You could go up to a teaspoon if you like a little stronger. And this is a whole nutmeg. And that's, just buy them like that. And then I just use a grater and then just grate like that. And I really like the freshly grated, the flavor, although you could use the dried. So I'm just going to whisk all that together. Now we're going to add the flour into our batter there in 3 stages, and we're going to alternate with 1/2 cup, which is 120 milliliters, 120 grams. I'm using a whole milk, a full fat milk. Along with, you will need 4 tablespoons, 55 grams of melted butter. So melt your butter and then let it cool down to room temperature. So I'm just going to dump my butter into my milk. So I'm going to add first about, 1/3 of the flour. I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'm going to beat that in. Do that slowly so the flour doesn't come up in your face. Okay, and I'm going to add about 1/2 of this in here. Again, just eyeball it. Flour. And rest of our milk and butter mixture. Just going to give this scrape down, make sure everything gets mixed in. And lastly, the rest of our flour. So that's our batter. It's kind of like a cross between a butter cake and a sponge cake. So now this is a fairly loose, like a cake batter. So in order to make our donuts, we are going to have to chill this for about an hour until it gets nice and firm, because we are going to roll it out and cut it into our donut shapes. So I'm just going to put this in my bowl here. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and, like I said, chill it for about an hour. And then when we come back, we will roll out the batter. So our batter is nice and firm. I chilled it about an hour. So now, I'm just going to loosen that. So you will need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a baking sheet, and I've lined mine with parchment paper. You could lightly butter it or spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. So now we want to flour our counter pretty well. And scoop that out. Gather nice flouring on top. So you can see it's pretty firm. We can roll it out. So we're going to roll this to about 1/4 of an inch. It's about 1/2 centimeter. So this recipe will give us about 12 donuts. Then that's 12. I'm making 3-inch size donuts. It's about 7.5 centimeters. Of course, if you want to make them larger or smaller, you will get a different number. Okay, so that looks good. So now, I'm just using 2 round cookie cutters, a 3-inch, 7.5 centimeter, and then a smaller one for the donut hole. So I'm going to flour that and cut it out like so. And then what you want to do is take your smaller one and in the center. I mean, you can actually buy a donut cookie cutter, but hey, if you've got like this, same thing. So I'm just going to space them a couple inches, about 5 centimeters apart. So I'm putting 3 across, 4 rows down. Okay, so our last one here, a little batter left over, but not enough to make another one. So there we go. So now, baking time. Everyone's oven is a little different. These are like little cakes. So what we don't want to do, we don't want to overbake them, because then they're going to be a little dry. I'm going to say somewhere between 14 and 16 minutes. You might want to check them a little less than that just to see where you're at. They will rise. They'll be set. You still want them a little soft on the top, and then underneath on the bottoms there'll be a light golden brown. So I'm saying like 14, 16 minutes. Okay, so our baked cake donuts are done. As you can see, if I turn it upside down, nice golden brown. So what I'm going to do is I have another rack, and I'm going to just put a piece of parchment underneath. I'll show you why in a minute. So we're going to dip them in the cinnamon sugar. So you will need 1 cup, which is about 200 grams of granulated white sugar. Now I'm going to make cinnamon sugar. If you prefer, you could just use the granulated white, but cinnamon sugar is very good. So 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and I'm just going to mix that together. And you will also need 4 tablespoons, 55 grams of melted butter, and a pastry brush. Now, I like, as you can see, I like a good cinnamon flavor. You can vary. If you would a milder one, you could use less. But I would try it this way. And of course, you could, I mean, you don't have to do cinnamon sugar. The other choices, you could toast some coconut, dried coconut, and dip your donuts in that. That would be good too. Okay, so now, what I do is I take my donut, and now some people dip their whole donut in the melted butter. I'm not going to do that because, you know, that'd be an awful lot of butter on there. So I'm just going to brush a thin coating all the way around, and on the inside, and on the bottom. And then I'm just going to dip in the cinnamon sugar. Sides. And there we have it. Our cinnamon sugar cake donut. Like I said, just brush. And the bottom. And now these are really good the day they're made, but actually I find 2-3 days you can store them, which is kind of nice. What do I like about this recipe? One, you know, it's a nice, more healthy alternative to deep frying. Although I like that too, but this is, you know, a little different. I also like a lot of recipes for cake donuts, you have to buy a special cake donut pan. I don't know about you, but I have enough pans. I don't want to buy another specialty pan, so that's why I like this recipe. So there we have it. Very nice. Nice and soft and tender, so let's try. You know, I know a deep fried donut, let's face it, it's really good. But I really like baking them. They have a very nice, soft and tender texture. I like the cinnamon sugar. It kind of gives a little bit of grittiness, you know, which contrasts nicely to the soft and tender cake donut inside. And then a little bit, I mean, it's not a strong nutmeg flavor. It's just, you know, to me, it's just perfect. So try these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com.